Got it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery. If this is your first time, this is a place where we just have genuine, authentic, transparent, and organic conversations about recovery in all different levels, from all different angles and severity needs, as well as, amazingly wonderful and effective modalities that we've discovered and use. And anyway, this week, Julianne is back with us. Of course, if you don't know Julianne, she's an affiliate coach here at 𝘔𝘠𝘕. And we have a very big shared passion for some very specific places in the recovery journeys. And one of those being harm reduction. And we really just wanted to come in and have a conversation about what that really looks like and means to us. And I think for me anyway, a lot of it's a large part because I believe firmly that everybody's treatment journey or recovery journey or lifestyle change needs to look, feel, and be however they need it to be. And whatever program or self-help or provider that they choose to engage with really needs to speak their language. So we're talking about, harm reduction. We're talking about things like just being sober conscious and really just looking at, gosh, what is the right recovery lifestyle for you? And how do you figure that out? And what do you do? And all of those things. So, I think Julianne and I both have embraced our journeys that are about the same length and time, from the same approach, maybe not the same avenues, but the same approach, like add, edit, delete, make it our own, right? Like for me, not everything was ready to recover at the same time. So it unfolded over, a 25-year period of time. And Julianne does things her way. But anyway, harm reduction for me is really looking at what are the biggest struggles in life, what would we prefer they look like, and what can we do to get us there? And so it's all about being effective and doing what works for the person, right? So I don't know, Julianne, hi, welcome.
Hey. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, I would say you're right on there. I feel like we are pretty aligned with the way that we view that. And, what harm reduction means to me is like taking a look at the different habits or things you're doing or substances you're using and looking at not just like the whole addiction, but just like, okay, are there spaces where, maybe you're not going to be ready to fully stop doing something, but where are the different areas you can reduce the amount of harm that you're doing to yourself and others around you to get to a more stable place and to maintain that stable place. And then also another aspect of that is that, like you said, everybody's recovery journey is their own and is different, and I think people need to see what works for them. And so harm reduction can also mean, maybe you're abstaining from your drugs of choice or a really destructive habit, but there's certain other things that you're still incorporating into your life. Like maybe occasionally you drink socially, but you don't, drink all the time. You don't drink when you're upset. You don't drink to solve a problem, stuff like that. But a couple drinks with some friends, as long as that isn't leading you back into a path of harm, maybe that's okay for you, or, maybe you quit drinking and you quit doing everything else, but you smoke pot every once in a while, because that really doesn't seem to have a huge negative effect on your life, and so I think you do have to be careful at the way you look at those things to justify what is harmful and what is not. But I think, that takes a lot of, just self-reflection and, getting really real with yourself too.
Wow, you said so much important stuff right there. And in my head, it's going, yep. So, I heard maintain, right? I heard maintain, and I heard in there, categorize, right? And so that's, that's something that we look at in attain is being able to break things down into specific categories so that we know, right? Like that it's appropriate in this particular category, and maybe it doesn't work over here, and in this one over here, and in our living free, we're always looking for, what is that solid foundation that I need to do, like that whole identification process, because then you said the word justify, and so anybody that knows me, I'm always going to prompt you, like, if you feel like you got to justify something, then there's probably still an issue, right? Because it becomes, and it becomes a thing where it's, just one more cookie, I'll eat better tomorrow. It becomes something along those lines. And so, but I think what you said, that is the tying it all together thing, is I don't drink to fix a problem. I don't drink when I'm mad. I don't, and so we look at, again, the attachment and the purpose. And so if we can remove the emotional need or the purpose for something outside of ourselves, then it maybe doesn't have to go away. I mean, because think about it. I work with a lot of people that have food addiction. I can't remove food from their life. We have to figure out how to restructure that. So when people ask me, do I have to give up alcohol? My answer is generally, I don't know yet.
That's
right?
fair.
Because I don't, maybe that is your aspiration, and we certainly can give it a shot. It doesn't happen more than it does happen, right? Meaning that, a lot of times, it might be our aspiration. However, it's just not working out for us. We've really got to remove it, because 9 times out of 10, when I drink, it goes poorly, or 1 time out of 10 it goes super poorly, and I still don't even want that one time. And so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and we just never know until we exhaust all efforts. And it's okay. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't know, is it's okay to exhaust all efforts. You just have to keep trying on a different version until you find the one that works for you. And I like that you brought in, giving up your substances of choice, insert whatever, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, but perhaps maintaining marijuana, because there are a lot of people that we see. This is, again, my personal thing, is if somebody doesn't necessarily, if they can utilize marijuana without abusing it, again, not for an emotional purpose, but has, say, maybe disordered eating, and they really need it to prompt the ability to actually eat food. I'd rather that than some other, man-made prescription medication. The same with anxiety or depression. If we can utilize it productively and proactively, and not as an escape measure or an emotional release, then yeah, right? Like, I think it's great. So I think, harm reduction, there's so many versions that we can have. And that's why I like the word sober curious so much, because it opens the doorways and the pathways to try on different versions.
I like that too. I like that a lot. It actually reminds me of when I was in a rehabilitation program about 8 years ago. And I checked myself into an outpatient program and just decided my life was totally not maintainable. It was not the way I wanted to live. And I needed to make a lot of changes. And I was really resistant to the idea of becoming completely sober at that time. I was like, I know what my problems are. It's A, B, and C. These are the things that are my problems that I should give up. But I'll keep smoking pot and, I'll keep drinking and it's all fine, because those are not my problems. And, when I really got real with myself, it was after, I was in the program for about 6 months. It was about halfway in. And one of my counselors said, you know what, why don't you just try it? Like, you can smoke pot again if you want, like, you can have a drink again if you want, that's fine. But what's really stopping you from just taking a couple months off and just seeing how you feel and seeing if these things were actually working for you, or seeing if you can, reincorporate them later and have it be fine. And so I spent a good amount of time abstaining from both, and realized, that I did have more of a problematic relationship with alcohol than I wanted to admit. And that, smoking pot was not something that was problematic if I was using it in the right way, and I wasn't using it as an escape measure, and using it for like medicinal purposes, stuff like that, for like sleeping and all that. And it really allowed me to have a lot of clarity having that time completely sober. And she was right. Like, I can do whatever I want. I could figure it out and I could figure out what works for me. And I did. And, you don't know if you don't try. And, and I think that's a great thing. And so I think being sober curious is great. And, I think everyone, should try it just to see, just see where
Absolutely.
it takes you.
I love this is an analogy, or actually not an analogy, a comparison that comes to mind the conversation that I have quite frequently with opiate pain management clients, right? Is we don't know what your organic pain is. Like, any organic pain that may be still residual or there, we can't even call it that until we remove the opiates for a period of time. And that period of time, of course, varies depending upon how long they've been utilizing this method for pain management, because the withdrawal mimics the pain. So until we remove it, we don't know what discomfort may still be left. So if you go straight from, say, a daily drinker to somebody that is just aspiring to be sober conscious, and skipping the sober curious, because they're different. So if we skip the sober curious, we can't remove the thing that we think may be causing some problems, or we know is causing some problems, but we're not sure if it's a total problem or not. And we don't, we're really robbing ourselves from that opportunity to be free from all things holding us hostage, just like so many pain management clients that I've worked with, that as soon as we've removed it and we've given it time to go back to a place of homeostasis, they're like, wow, my pain is actually at an over-the-counter, Motrin level of relieving, right? And so, we don't know until we try how much we may be missing out on. If, so we always have to ask ourselves, why is it so important that we hold on to, say, that social, I only on the weekends, when, only on Friday night when I go out with my husband, what do we need it for? Is it because the wine pairs great with the steak that you're eating, or what? Now, don't get me wrong, anybody listening, because I'm here to tell you there are a lot of people that can sit down at a table and be like, it's Friday, I'm going to have a couple beers with dinner and be done. But then there's people like me, if I had a couple beers with dinner, I would go home and want to, keep having beers until I went to bed. Like, I could go without, but I wouldn't be able to start and not just finish out the day from whatever time I started. And unfortunately, the nights began to burn into the, early afternoon, late morning over time, right? Like, it was okay. Anyway, so unless you're willing to be sober curious, and give it a shot, you don't know if sober conscious is something that you can even do appropriately. But I know a lot of people are really trying to start from a sober conscious place. So our 20 somethings, there are some, 20 something, early 20s that are, really focusing on being sober conscious. But, and I guess if, you start there, then hopefully, you can maintain that.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes, I think for me personally, it was like a control thing. It was like not admitting that maybe somebody had like a better idea, or like someone giving me direction would actually be helpful. And I was like, no, I know I have problems, but I still know what's absolutely 100% best for me, but again, like I said, I had to get really real with myself and say like, wow, your way is like not really working. And, I think I mentioned this the last time I was here with you, you can like pick up a lot of things from people, and you can put them down too, if you don't like them also, and so I think one of the best things you can do besides spending that time being sober curious is also open yourself up to suggestion, open yourself up to another way, because just because you start, taking direction from someone or from a program or from something or from several different sources, it might not be what's in the long run going to totally work for you, but you're trying it, you're seeing if it works for you. You can take the things from it that are working. And then if there are things that aren't working, then explore that, and find out like, okay, why isn't this part of it working for me? And what can I do differently and keep those things that are working? But again, you won't really know if you don't like drop that kind of need for control and need to be, right all the time, and just kind of say, you know what, it's okay if somebody has a suggestion about something, I'm going to just try it, and just see what happens, and just leave it open-ended like that.
Absolutely. Edit, delete, make it your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. I like it. I like it a lot. Something else popped into my head, and it was escaping me at the moment because I was just listening so intently. Well, okay, so I was. If we think about, you were talking about, that's what it was. You were talking about the control needs, and I think this is something that most of us can relate to. So if we think about it, our addictions, our negative attachments, which don't have to be chemical in nature, and our habits, right? Those habitual things that we have to do, whether it's a spin class or I don't know, something else, those habits, being overly busy or, people pleasing, like those kinds of things, they're seated in a pressure to perform. Whether that's a personal pressure to perform or a pressure for the thing outside of us to perform, regardless, it's a pressure to perform. And it's really a reliance on something other than ourselves to generate what? So, and I say this all the time: peace, joy, comfort, relief, bring me value, validity, worthiness, those esteem needs. And I can't say, anybody really, alcohol, relationship with alcohol is truly seated in an esteem need. But I will say that I know a lot of people that I've worked with over time that have social anxiety really rely on the alcohol to bring them what? To bring them value, make them feel like they have something of value to bring to the room, or, to even be able to show up and act like they're not freaking out for being in a room full of strangers. And so there's a lot of different things. And I know we were talking about how we can identify what our habits feel like last night in our meetup group.
Yeah.
And if we can't put an adjective to it, a good, solid, descriptive word, then there's the beginning of the problem. What does your habit feel like?
Yeah.
Does it feel like an albatross? Does it feel like, a control, something that has control over you? Or do you feel like it's something that you have control over? A lot of people that have, disordered eating, we'll call it, right? Without using, diagnostic criteria, but it's something that they can control in their life. So they feel out of control. So now they have this control need. So they're relying on their ability to either restrict or overindulge with food, whatever their choice of food might be. And so hopefully everybody's like noticing the interchangeability of all of the things, because it's not just alcohol. It's not just, chemical substance. It can be food, it can be shopping, it can be, our need to have an overbooked calendar. But, so harm reduction can come in a lot of forms. It can come in a lot of different ways. And sometimes it's just adjusting our life balance.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I think that's like a really good way to put it. Because, when our lives are out of balance, that's when, we start to rely on those other things too, to try to like, in a way, almost in our minds, think we're rebalancing because it's making us feel better, and if we feel better, then obviously everything's okay, but then life is still out of balance. Things are still out of control, and it gives you kind of like this fake semblance of being in control of the situation, but you're really not, and, I don't know, everything you were saying was kind of making me think of this quote. I'm probably going to like butcher it, but there's this writer that I really like who posts a lot on Instagram called 𝘔𝘢𝘴𝘵. And like one of his quotes that I really, really like and find really relatable, it's something like, I realized I was never really addicted to any one thing. I was addicted to everything but being myself. I think I said that a little wrong, but it's somewhere along those lines, where it's like you're looking outside of yourself for everything instead of nurturing those things inside of you that are going to bring you balance and that are really going to bring you joy and are going to close those gaps that you don't need to fill them with like you're saying, like that extra food or, going to Taco Bell, like on your way to work or something in the morning, even though you're going to eat lunch, with your coworkers or whatever, because you're just like stressed and you need to do something. Or, maybe you're like drinking too much coffee because that's like a crutch or something, or using drugs or alcohol or shopping, whatever it is, or maybe like a multiple of those things. And you don't even realize that you're doing more than one thing to do that, So I think that's definitely like a valid thing.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that I see primarily when people are feeling out of balance, are feeling out of alignment, they have generally just 3 areas that they focus on. And this is the primary crux to why even when they think they're in balance, they're still not in balance. And so they just really don't understand, it still feels icky. Although outwardly they may say, I've got my life balance in order, but inside they're like, this is still not right, because we focus on health, which primarily we think is, physical health. And we don't add in the actual 6 categories that go into creating a healthy lifestyle. They look at work and they look at home. So it's home, work, and health is what they focus on as far as balance. And they just have so it's a very narrow perspective around what a truly balanced life really requires. And I know that in our work, we look at 8 primary categories with 6 subcategories, which totals 14 categories that in essence have to be defined by each person, because I can't give you an example of how to define your spirituality, your family, your life planning, your development, your social, all of those things have to be defined. The bullet points of what fills those is personal. It's very intimate. It's very unique to each person. There may be similarities, there may be crossovers, but it's very unique. And so most people don't dive in that much. They're like, okay, I just got to balance this out. And so maybe at work they throw in a lunch break, or they quit working so much overtime, or they make adjustments there, because I see a lot of people that are on salary, that will work from sun up to sundown and really feel like they never have time for the family. So, they're having issue with their partners and their kids. So they'll make time adjustments and think that the time is the root of healing. And then they create time to add in physical exercise and make some adjustments to their dietary practices, but that's surface. And so really what I'm getting at is I think a lot of self-improvement efforts are innocently shallow.
Yeah, I agree. Because also, like when you mentioned those three categories of like work, health, and like home life, there's also this really big like social idea of what those should look like and what we should aspire for them to be. And I think when you're only looking at those three things to balance, it's really easy to look at like what it's supposed to look like, but it doesn't mean you're looking at what that looks like for you. You're like, oh, well, at work, I'm supposed to get everything done and do everything. And then, maybe like throw a couple things in there so it looks like my day is balanced, and then for family, well, if something's wrong in my family, I obviously just to make more time for them, but it doesn't mean you're actually looking at like, maybe there's some other issues there, like that just spending time with them isn't the biggest deal. Maybe there's like certain things like when your children wants to talk to you about, or certain things that are really important to them. And you're just making time, to do the things that you think the family should be doing. You're not really like taking time to sit with the kids and say, like, what is it that you guys want to do? Like, what would make you guys feel more balanced? And then that provides some healing in the family because you're getting collaboration there instead of just looking at this viewpoint, or health. It's like, oh, well, I should be skinny and I should go to the gym every day and I should be fit and I should have this, much BMI and I should drink my protein shake every day, but it's like, is that really working for you in terms of your physical and mental health? Like maybe you should be doing something else, maybe it's not hitting the gym 5 days a week. Maybe it's like exploring hiking or, doing other things, or like really thinking about the things that are really going to bring you joy instead of, like you're saying, like putting that pressure on yourself to perform, to create this vision of balance. So it looks that way on the surface, but it's probably really still not, And so I completely agree with that.
Absolutely. Well, you're hitting it on the head, because if we're looking at our family unit, we tend to fall prey to settling into our perceived role. Mm-hmm. As long as I'm fulfilling my roles and duties within the relationship, then I'm balanced, I'm good. Mm-hmm. But it's so much more than that. You talked about, child rearing or even relationship rearing, right? Because there are needs inside our intimate relationships, spouse, partner, whatever, that say, have more fun. So we have recreation, and we have, again, social, we have developmental, and those things can all cross over. So if you're doing, say you go camping and you're hiking and it's a family thing, that touches family, it touches spirituality, it touches recreation, it all the things. And you can be doing social things that also fill a work cup and a recreation, there's all different ways of being able to dot, connect the dots, bring things together and look at it and then evaluate just how fulfilling things can be, but also identify just where we're missing the mark. And a lot of people think life planning is, financial driven. There's so much more to life planning, And anyway, so, there's all of those things. So we don't want to just go, this is what it's supposed to look like, the comparison. We want to be able to do cost versus benefit analysis, pros and cons. We want to collaborate with the important people in our life, and then make categories and create intrigue. But, if we think about it, as we go through life, generally speaking, our life partner is where we, that's how we end our life. And so we want to nurture that relationship even through the parenthood years. And so there's all of that to take into consideration. Again, life planning. So many marriages that when the kids leave and one of them hits, empty nest, and then they're like, I don't even, we don't even have a friendship anymore. Like we just, fell into our roles, and now we can't even, get along, or we don't want to do anything the same. And it becomes like this, depleted intrigue. There's just there's no inspiration to continue to be intrigued. But I mean, so totally off topic, and we've gone, way over here like we always do. I'm totally guilty of that. But balancing your life is a big piece of harm reduction.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just really figuring out like what is really going to work for you, instead of, like we're talking about balancing, like instead of looking at like what works for everybody and what's supposed to work and what that's supposed to look like, and being really hard on yourself when you're not fitting that, and that's why I think it is really important to take those really deep dives into stuff like that and really look at like what works for you, what can you maintain and not maintain, and so that you don't have to feel like bad about your recovery. Your recovery is supposed to be positive. It's supposed to be like a good thing, and like when you're trying to just stuff yourself into those molds, that can be really hard, and some things work better for others, and the whole point is to try to, create the most functional, like happy, like joyful life that you can, and it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect or, or that you're going to do everything right. And it might take a really long time to get to that point. Like it took me a few years of, like trying different things and going back into denial about certain things, and then getting real again with myself and like really working that out. And I wouldn't even say today I have all the answers, I abstained from the drugs that were really, really detrimental in my life. And, and I do smoke marijuana every once in a while, and I do drink socially, and stuff like that, but that's because that works for me. But then that being said, like I mentioned earlier, like I do have a bit of a problematic relationship with alcohol. So then that's someplace where I need to like consistently edit myself and consistently, be real with myself about the fact that like sometimes it is a problem, and sometimes I think it's not being a problem, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh damn, like wow, that was probably like a really bad time to be drinking, because then you ended up like day drinking the whole day, and like how did that really work for you? It probably really didn't. The next day you didn't feel great at work, you felt like crap, you didn't want to do anything, and that was a really slippery slope. And knowing myself, it's something that like I have to look at and say like, okay, like maybe now is the time to like abstain again from drinking for a little bit and see, is that really something that's been working for me right now in my life, and stuff, or has it been something that's becoming like a problem again, and just things like that, and just being really conscious of my triggers and where that takes me as well, and that kind of stuff.
We do have to be an active participant, which is, I think a complacency issue that people often face in a recovery. We'll call it a journey, right? Like I don't, walk around and identify as a person in recovery, although, for all intent and purposes, like in this space, sure, I'm in recovery because I've done a recovery journey. I live a recovery lifestyle based on my definition, but it is a place that means I have to make sure that I'm not complacent. So when I say a recovery lifestyle, for me, that doesn't mean for me, I don't have to go to 3 meetings a week. In fact, I don't go to meetings at all. Although if I really think about it, I do, because we all get together here in our community, the Turning Leaves community, we get together once a week. And so for all intent and purposes, we do have a meeting, but not everybody's had a poor relationship with alcohol. Anyway, sidetrack squirrel, but it's an active process. And so if you want to have a life improvement journey, a life recovery journey, however you want to word it, a recovery lifestyle, lifestyle is a way of living. And it doesn't stop when say the problems cease, the original problems cease. It has to continue in a maintenance level. You've used this word, several times. It has to be lifelong, manageable, and maintainable. But that means I have to be interested enough in myself and how I'm experiencing living, how I'm experiencing my environment, how I'm choosing to live my life on a day-to-day, basis, so that I can identify when I'm being emotionally reactive and be able to see how much of it's about somebody outside of me and how much of it's about how I'm interpreting what something else is, or whatever. There's a series of skill sets, the emotional intelligence that we create in my journey, which is the systems and programs that we utilize, that's why we condition them for a good solid plus year. We can, we maintain that with complacency check-ins, because it's so easy to get complacent. I meet with people all the time, and they're like, I don't know what happened. I just had enough. And I sat down and I had 2 beers, and, I stopped at 2, but I still feel like, I used it as a coping, and, I feel bad about it. But if they're still in their first 2 years, we look at and we identify, you were in a post-acute withdrawal period for like a solid week, and you weren't paying attention. You were, a little bit complacent there with checking in with yourself and just loving on yourself and think that. So, complacency, I think, is a big piece to why, and I'll throw this one in there because it's my favorite thing to use, that why people have to go on the fad diet at least once a year, and why isn't it, lifelong, manageable, and maintainable? Because we get complacent with it, or we do this diet that is so extreme, and we work to drop 30 pounds in such a rapid fashion that nobody could maintain that, and they don't think about the maintenance after. They just start, slowly but surely adding back in, foods, and slowly but surely reducing their, diet, their exercise, or, physical activity. And I say the better route to doing this is putting together, fitness regimen, or, an activity measure that it can be lifelong, manageable, and maintainable. You start there, you make adjustments and tweaks to your relationship with food and your dietary practices that can be lifelong, manageable, and maintainable. It may take you 2 years to lose the 30 pounds, but it will come off, and then it'll be maintainable. Or because this is maintainable, you're going to go to your natural state, and the numbers shouldn't matter any longer. Like, this is a maintainable thing for me as far as my diet and exercise go, right? My health. I know I can keep this up. So whatever the outcome is, I'm going to be satisfied with, because anything else is going to be punishing and restricting. And any wavering from that's going to make me feel guilty. Anyway, just a thought process on the best way to go about that.
Yeah, and I think those are some really good points. Like, for example, like with food, if you want to talk about in terms of like harm reduction too, it's like, if someone's struggling with their weight, which I myself did, and I lost about oh my gosh, over 40 pounds right before and sort of at the beginning of the pandemic. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to like hit a certain number and want to look a certain way. And then I realized like, okay, like kind of in a harm reduction way, I was like, okay, what are the actual little things I can do? Because doing all this crazy workout stuff and a lot of those things and crash diets, it like wasn't something that was working for me. And it was making me feel even like worse about my weight loss journey. So I was like, okay, what can I do here? So I did a few things. I eliminated alcohol for a while. I like completely, like even like a drink, like with dinner, I just didn't drink alcohol at all. I abstained from like certain foods like bread, pasta, carbs, like, but not like all carbs, just like the really, really bad ones. And I was like, what are things that I can cut out that are really easy for me? And then what are things like foods that are really healthy that I actually enjoy eating, instead of eating all these things that I don't even like, or something like that, which actually I like a lot of things. So that's not a lot of stuff, but that I'm just using that as like an example, and so I tailored that to myself, and I didn't quite end up with the body that I like imagined and was like, oh, I'll look like this model, but I ended up losing 40 pounds and I looked great and I felt great and I felt really good about myself, and it's been manageable. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little. I have allergies because my cat makes me like all gross when I talk for a long time. But so, and that's something like I can maintain. And I'm, I used to be like 100 pounds when I was a lot younger. And in my mind, I was thinking like, oh, that's what I'll look like. But, in reality, like I'm 36 now and I'm not going to look like my 100-pound, like 20-year-old self, and so I had to let go of a lot of those attachments and then just look at what was really going to work for me and what's attainable. And that's not to say like here and there, I don't, want to like step up my workout routine or do certain things, but I just had to really look at like, okay, what's going to reduce myself to like a healthy weight and, make me feel good about myself, and maybe it's not like, everything that's following a certain regimen, but it's going to be certain things that are just going to get me to a place that I want to be. And it worked for me, and so, that's made it a lot easier for me instead of putting it in a whole box and trying to like stick with a certain diet and then not being able to stick with those actual changes, or feeling like even if I stuck with the changes, like it's not really making me happy,
I think so many people have innocently misconceptions of these diet plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
We look at them and say, oh, this star or this person or this influencer or whatever is doing this diet routine or regimen or plan or whatever and is engaged in it, and they're getting these results, and in some of that we may not know what the true truth is, because it may not just be the diet that they're doing. We don't know their emotional state. We don't know how much they may be obsessively exercising on
Mm-hmm.
top of. But none of that really matters. Really, what I'm getting at is every single person's body, albeit we're very similar, still functions uniquely and to themselves. So foods that work well for you may not be foods that work well for me. And so, me, like I remove things that don't work for me any longer. And then, I really work off of that. So there's no real specific. Anyway, we could talk about, those kinds of things all together. Again, it's the harm reduction piece of it. If onions and vegetables really make me feel unwell, then why would I eat them? So I don't. And and the different things, like pasta works really great for my daughter and it doesn't work for me. And so we have all of those things, and I see that we're running right up to 1:45 again, like we generally do. So I think this has been a really great conversation about the breadth of what harm reduction and sober conscious and sober curious and different things and how it can actually affect our life. We've talked about things like life balance. We've talked about healthy living. We've talked about dietary practices. We've talked about all kinds of things. And there's something to be said for creating resiliency and strengthening resiliency in our lives. And so, you know, I will, you know, I'm going to recommend that, you know, people follow the link that where they can subscribe and they can poke around, because we do have those things. You know, there's on the platform, there's strengthening your resilience, life unfolding. There's the balance effect. There's all kinds of tools and things that you can utilize at your own pace, or just be curious about to look at and maybe get some more information. So, you know, we'll put a link in there in the comments for you. And I'm sure that, you know, Julianne and I will come back in about another, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, probably 3 weeks. And, you know, pick up where we left off and talk even more. What do you think, Julianne? Does that sound
Yeah,
good?
for sure. I could talk about recovery stuff all day.
I know, me too. The problem is I got to stick to my
And I feel like I
schedule.
probably
Yeah.
ramble.
It's okay. That's how people, you know, get to hear something, right? If somebody just, you know, heard, you know, one sentence that we were talking about resonated with them, or helped them go, oh, that's what I'm missing, then that's all we really wanted to do in this space anyway. So anyway, everybody, we will be back next week. I will talk soon. Julianne, hold on for one quick second, and we'll talk later.